Hi, I'm Celia Boothman, founder of LTR Coaching, and I'd like to welcome you to the Inspired Triathletes podcast, where I'll be bringing you stories from female triathletes and taking on topics that are important to women in the sport. Okay, so welcome to the Inspired Triathletes podcast. Today I'm here with Erin Taylor, who is the founder of Athletes for Yoga. And I first heard Erin on the Purple Patch podcast many years ago. I don't know how many years ago that would have been now. Have you any idea? Or
Gosh, well, I think in terms of how old my children are,
yeah.
oh, probably about, I think my daughter was about 2, so
Oh
6
wow.
years ago, 6 years ago.
Wow. Yeah, that's a long time. It seems to have flown by as time does, doesn't it? But yeah, so Erin is a mum of how many children have you got? Two or
2.
yeah. And they are now
They're
oh,
5 and 8.
5 and 8. Okay, so you kind of set up the business when they were quite young, and then like have developed the business along with bringing up the children as well. So that's quite an amazing thing to have done. Um, so I was really inspired when I listened to that podcast, and I was checking out Athletes for Yoga, and it inspired me to incorporate a little bit more yoga into my training. And I remember trying to fit it around kids. Actually, that was one of the things I wanted to talk to you about maybe later, how you kind of, because you're so time crunched, aren't you, when you've got small children, and it's like, okay, when do I do that? I remember doing legs up the wall when I was outside their bedrooms, like just waiting for them to sort of settle down or something. I'd just lie outside the room and do that kind of thing. But yeah, if you've got any tips, that'd be great. But so we'll thank you for being here anyway. We'll start off with just if you give us an overview of why it was that you wanted to set up Athletes for Yoga originally. Kind of give us an overview of what it is and why you wanted to set this up for athletes.
Sure, and thanks for having me. I started Athletes for Yoga to help as many athletes as possible to use yoga to become more balanced and resilient, and really to achieve their goals. I think really I wanted to create an accessible entry point to yoga for an audience that really needs it, that can really benefit from all that yoga has to offer. And I think a lot of athletes have heard that yoga can help them.
Mhm.
But I found that the dots really kind of have to be connected. How what we do on the mat directly impacts what you're doing out on your run or on your bike, in the pool, whatever your sport or fitness pursuit might be. Because really, I found that it's that kind of knowledge and understanding of this joining of the dots of how what we're doing here helps us there, really gives us the motivation to practice and really to kind of to do it right in a way. I first took up yoga as an injured collegiate athlete. I played basketball, and at the time, I have kind of found myself in that position of hearing that yoga could help me. My team doctor suggested I do some yoga, and um, I went to a couple of kind of random classes, and I found them appealing, and I could see kind of how it would help me as an athlete, because I was really coming at it from that mindset of how is this going to help me heal my injury? How is this going to help strengthen my performance? And I remember wishing at the time that you know the, that the teacher could speak more specifically to those needs. Really put the practice into context. So over the years, I've developed Athletes for Yoga to help join those dots and create a really accessible entry point for athletes.
Yeah, I think that's really important. It's like it's this abstract idea, or yeah, yoga's really good for you, but a lot of people don't even really understand what yoga is, and because there's so many parts of it as well that it can be quite confusing. You might go to one class and it's completely different to another, and is it actually doing what you want, and what do you want from yoga. Like you were trying to rehabilitate an injury, it could be that you're looking for strength or mobility or kind of maintenance or something like that. So having that idea of what it is that you want to get from it, I think is a really good starting point for people that are a bit unsure as well. Like, do I need this or not? Well, what do you want to, what are your goals, and how can you help, how can that help you? And you were quite skeptical at first about yoga, were you? You kind of had a bit of, because I think it had a bit of a bad reputation at one point. It's very much more, popular, and people know a lot more about it. But I feel like athletes, especially like high performance athletes, can have a bit of a mental block with it. Do you get that impression at all with like, oh, it's for relaxing or it's not for me, that kind of barrier to it?
Sure. And I mean, I should say, there are so many different kinds of yoga approaches and voices in the space, and it's all really valuable
Mm.
and brings something really important. I think with athletes, it's the context is so important. The context is really key because I see, I've been doing this for 20 years, and
Mm.
more often than not, people will come to do yoga not because they're interested in yoga, but because they want to run faster.
Yeah.
This nagging hip issue, they are not recovering properly or effectively from the load of triathlon training. So
Yeah.
it's really like meeting meeting them where they are with that context, and that's something that I could relate to, having kind of been in that position myself. And when I first took up yoga and going to some random classes in San Francisco, and
Mm.
more of the more like the yoga stereotypes of the balloon pants and the oming and all
Yeah.
that, which there's very much a place for all that. But I think for an athlete, to really be able to access it and again connect those dots in a way that really motivates them to practice, actually use their practice. That's really what gets results.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think once you know the benefits and you know what you want to get, like we said. And how do you do that in athletes for yoga? You have like short sessions, don't you? So how do people know where they should be going, and what they should be doing there? I think you've organized it pretty well from what I remember. Like,
Sure. Yeah. Well, so Athletes for Yoga, it's a video platform and app. And I mean, if you're new to the platform, there's right up top, there's a section called Start Here, which,
right.
talks about, you know, I should back up it. I should just walk this back a little bit and say, really, the context of why you're coming is key. But the biggest context of all is balance, right?
Mm,
So we're engineered for balance. Our bodies are designed in a certain way for a reason.
yeah.
And especially as athletes, everything that we're doing creates a lot of imbalance,
Yeah.
which is fine, um, except when left unaddressed over time. Um, the body is very, very clever and will compensate in all kinds of ways to keep us going, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
front
Yeah.
with imbalance and dysfunction, um, often to our own detriment. So over time, when we don't address these imbalances, that's when we start to run into some problems. Like eventually, something will break, and
Yeah.
that's no fun. So thinking about balance, I think, is really the most important context. So when people come to our platform, we kind of guide them to think about how is imbalance showing up in your body.
Yeah.
So we have a set of videos that gives some guidance around self assessing, imbalance in various areas of the body.
Okay.
I've also written a book about this. My book, Hit Reset, explains some of the most common imbalances that almost all athletes experience in all different areas of the body.
Yeah.
You think about what's a what's the solution? What's a really practical way I can address this in 2 minutes a day?
Yeah.
So it's about really being aware of how imbalance is showing up for you, and
Yeah.
then addressing that with really practical solutions. And when we do that, that creates a really powerful practice.
Yeah. 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 So specifically, yoga will help you to address those imbalances, kind of prevent or maybe help heal some kinds of injuries that you might get. And how about improving performance? Where do you see that kind of fitting into the puzzle?
Sure, yeah, and I should say also, I mean, those who like, some people might come to yoga because they're like, I have tight hamstrings, or
Yeah.
have a specific, purpose, context in mind out the gate, and so what we have, like, you can search by area of the body.
Yeah.
So quick hip reset, flexible running hamstrings, so you can really kind of address whatever area is feeling timely to you. With performance, again, it's kind of really balance
Yeah.
improve performance. And yoga is a practice that, um, you know, helps us to become more balanced and resilient.
Mm,
Yoga specifically, I mean, yoga really strengthens the body as the integrated unit that it's designed to be.
yeah.
Uh, and help in doing so, we can really prevent injuries and um, recover from the demands of everything that we're doing,
Mm,
especially as athletes. And the recovery piece is something that I'm particularly passionate about. I've also written a book about this, work in
awesome.
the athlete's plan for real recovery and winning
Yeah.
results, kind of is more of a deep dive on really how to use mental focus training, meditation,
Yeah.
and physical relaxation practices. That's restorative yoga, how we use these tools to really optimize our recovery. And in doing so, we actually get so much more out of
Yeah.
everything else that we're doing, and we feel better. So, um,
Yeah. I think, recovery is a massive part of it that is often people go, there's no point, doing. I do have athletes that if I put recovery sessions in, won't do them because I think there's no point to them. And I try and explain it, and I've even tried to word it differently. Um, so it's not a recovery session because it can put people off doing it. So it's like an integration or a um, adaptation or something like that, because that recovery is what drives your adaptation to the training. And not making time for that, you're missing out on a massive piece of your performance. So yeah, I think that's really important, thinking about it in terms of how is this helping me to kind of fit another part into my. It is like when you're training for a massive event like a triathlon, you're doing a lot of training. It is like a jigsaw puzzle trying to fit it all in, isn't it? It's like, how do you do all of these things and maintain some kind of balance? I mean, it's not going to be completely balanced when you're training for big events all of the time, but you can try and kind of compensate with these practices to help bring some kind of, you know, if we're in that high cortisol state all of the time, then we're just not going to be getting performance gains. So that's what you're saying, these little kind of interventions with the breathing or the meditation, which can also carry over into your mindset, that's going to help you on race day and also just generally in life as well. So, it's something that I think I I couldn't. I was like, I can't fit it in. I can't fit it in. And I started doing it, and it was like, you don't need to do much. It's just got to be a little bit like we said earlier. You can do it at a certain time, and sticking it with having your video platform or something like that, where you've got that library that you can just go to and go. It takes the thinking out of it to a certain extent as well. So it's like, okay, I don't need to work out what I need to do. I can just go on there and find something for my tight hamstrings, which I have.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. And I think that's part of the beauty of it is that, I mean, people don't feel, we feel like we don't have time, but really, um, we don't have time to not prioritize and value
Mm,
recovery because it really is just as important and equally as productive as everything else that we do.
mm,
And it's really that a little often approach that
yeah,
we get the most out of. So rather than feeling like, oh, I don't have time to do a whole yoga class. I don't have time to, do a 20-minute stretch sesh. Like just a 5-minute hip mobility routine is like gonna do
yeah.
you. Or even like, I don't know if you can very faintly see on the wall behind me, there's this kind of
Mm.
this line that's from when I work with people here in my office. Those are the heels from legs
Ah, okay.
which I do myself as a transition when I'm done with my workday in here. I mandated for myself, I usually spend about 10 minutes there with my heels on that line, uh,
Yeah,
making a transition. And um, yeah, so it's really like, knowing that um, it does matter, those even 2 or 5 minutes. And the more often you do it, not only the more you want to do it, the more you'll want to, really claim those little moments, which
yeah,
happen during transitions that you could just, you know, lie down and get into child's pose or whatever it is that you're going to do. But the more we practice that, the more efficiently and effectively we can actually you know balance our nervous system and
mm,
to that more restorative restful state. That's so
yeah. Yeah, and that's you were talking about legs up the wall, weren't you, earlier with the heat? Yeah, just in case people don't know.
yes, lying
So,
down into it, that's like literally that is, I call it the boss of recovery. That's it. That's the queen, lie down, put your legs up the wall, just exactly what it sounds like, just
mm,
magic.
yeah, it's like it's so good, and it's I think what's nice about it is just so easy as well. You don't have to think.
Hmm.
I did the 4 by what's it called again? 4 by 48? Is it that? You know, when you run 4 miles every 4 hours, 48 hours.
All right.
I did that in lockdown, um, and I did legs up the wall quite a bit in between those sessions. Right, there's a video of me just lying there with my legs up the wall for quite a while. It's so nice, and it's a nice one to do before bed, like just to reset. Because I know a lot of athletes do have trouble when they are in that sort of high arousal state to get to sleep. It's just something to bring everything down and relax you. Especially, nowadays there's just so much that you can end up doing until I don't know what time, and then not getting in an optimal state for sleep. And yoga is something that can help just before you try, because obviously sleep is another part of your recovery. If you're not doing that, then that's not going to help you either. So it can be like something you do at the end of the day. It's kind of like finding the time that works for you. Like you say, those transition points are great. Are there any other kind of ways that you've managed to integrate it, with having children? Is there anything specific that you've done, or
Yeah, that's a good question. So, I mean, I call it yoga for real, which,
yeah,
doing what you can when you can. And it's been just an eye opener for me to see how, I mean, before I had kids, I used to do much longer practices and longer meditations. And I feel like I actually do a lot more yoga now than I did
right,
pre-kid because instead I'm using it throughout the day in the moments
okay,
when I really kind of need it most. And I found the same when my kids were much littler and even more of a handful. and, requiring just, that constant supervision. And it's like, stretch my hamstrings while I'm waiting for the kettle to boil. Uh,
Mm,
in the evening, if they're watching a bit of TV, I'll just get on the floor and do a little bit of hip stretching.
yeah.
In the morning, now as a practice, I often, now that my family sleeps until to a more humane hour, actually, I like to get up ahead of everyone just to have
Yes.
a little bit of time by myself to just kind of set my state for the day with a little bit of movement, or sometimes it's just a little bit of breathing,
Mm,
something simple to set my state. That's become an important part of my practice, and
nice.
it's just that knowing that, a little often is a lot. And absolutely, I found that the more, I do things, the more I use these practices, the more I just want to do them. It's like you want to get it to a point where, I mean, that's really like creating a practice for your real life.
Mm,
Because if it doesn't work in your real life, it won't work. And
no.
you want it to feel like, a bit like brushing your teeth. It's beyond even a habit. It's something you do. Like, I feel a bit dirty if I haven't done any yoga today, right? It's like something, oh, I just,
It's not right. Yeah, yeah.
not okay if you don't do these things
Yeah.
to yourself. I think that when you can kind of get into that mindset through your, repetition, that's when it really starts to become a natural rhythm rather than this like extra thing you have to try to fit in.
Yeah, like a box you have to tick or like something like that that's kind of, yeah, I've got to get that done. And because then you're going in with the intention of like, I've got to tick this off, not actually maybe getting what you actually need from it. It's like
Uh,
another thing on your list. It sounds like your practice has really become quite intuitive um, now. So would you say that's developed? That's something that's developed with you since you started?
it has, absolutely. And I think, again, it's this sense of like the more you practice, the more I think the more aware you become of just kind of, what's going on in your body.
Yeah.
And I think as athletes, like this awareness and kind of felt sense is super important because we're usually doing such a high volume of things, often so hard and so fast that we kind of just blow right past like sensation, and often, the body giving us really important cues about what's going on, often little like even little niggles or, things that, can lead to injuries even.
Mm.
Oh, I'm too busy to deal with this right now. I can't,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
I've got training to do.
Yeah, it's like, well, if you don't sort it out,
Yeah.
sort you out later. And so, really like slowing down enough that and you can still do everything you need to do, but
Mm,
keeping yourself, on a cadence where you're maintaining some, sense of how everything is feeling and being willing to respond to what's coming up. And the more you do that, the more that just becomes a natural way of kind of being in your,
yeah.
that I think is really important, and that serves us so much in sport and in life.
Yeah, I think, like as you say, as endurance athletes, we're used to pushing through, ignoring the discomfort, the pain, the kind of like just that's what you train your body to do to a certain extent. Um, I remember going to see a guy who did somatics, and he was like, "Well, you've trained your body to like not to ignore all this stuff, so you've got to kind of tune back in." And I was like, "Okay." So, and it's quite subtle, like sometimes that you feel something, and you can tune into it and just pick it up before it becomes a big thing. And it once you learn how to do that, and I think yoga is a great kind of gateway, as you say, to learning more about your body and picking up those signals. And it's not something to be scared, because I think for me, I was scared of picking up those signals because it's like, well, if I like listen to my body, then I'm gonna have to stop. And you kind of catastrophize and think it's gonna stop everything. All my training's gonna go downhill. I'm not gonna be able to get fit, and I'm gonna lose all my fitness, and blah 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 blah. But that is not the case at all. And I think like since my practice has developed and I've got more experience as an athlete probably as well, I've learned, okay, if that happens, just do this for a bit, and then you can kind of get back to things. And it's just much easier than kind of pushing through and battling all the time. So
It is, and it's almost like this, to me, it's all just like a forever kind of revelation that we actually we end up being more productive and
mm,
moving closer toward our goals. Like this is possible, not just from like gritting our teeth and, pushing through it, but that's possible from taking a deeper breath. We can get
mm,
there by taking a deeper breath. And, you know, to me, that's always been a revelation. And, it all comes back to, I think, just balance as a practice because I mean, balance is not like it's not like this end goal. It's not like this fixed thing. It's
no,
different every day, day to day, and moment to moment, and it's just our ongoing, attention and awareness of what's coming up, and just the willingness to respond to that rather than ignoring, uh,
yeah.
really important signals. That really help. That it really just optimizes everything.
Yeah, I do think a lot of athletes are scared though to listen to that. And it's just it just takes practice, like you say. You need to kind of learn it for yourself. No one can really tell you it. You have to feel it in your body and understand it in your mind for yourself without, and things can help, but it has to kind of come from you to a certain extent. So, I just wanted to ask as well, like we've talked about how important it is for us to practice yoga. Is there anything specifically, because I specialize in coaching women, and I know that women do take on a lot quite often. And do you find that they don't tend to prioritize their practice or themselves sometimes? Is it something that can help people to start giving themselves a bit more time to themselves or prioritizing what they need to do?
I think it's very easy to, put yourself last on the list, really, especially often for women and for moms, and
Mm,
you know, um, especially as we move through as women, we move through these different seasons of our life, and and then there's also there's a lot of different hormonal shifts we go through, and even for month to month, and
yeah.
that it again comes back to balance and being willing to recognize where you are and respond to that. I think is so important. And I know for myself, like when I when I don't practice and when I haven't carved out some time for myself, um that you know that doesn't help anyone. That
No.
family, I'm not as effective in my work. It just, it's like the put your own air mask on first. Like,
Yeah.
it's so important. It really is. And I think as women also, like having your practice is a really valuable tool for navigating the different seasons that we
Mhm.
all go through. And every time you come to your practice, it just kind of gives you really that reference point and the space to check in to kind of realign yourself and kind of reconnect with what's important, what's needed, how can I support myself right now or today. Otherwise we're just blowing right through everything.
Yeah.
I don't think we can sort of be at our highest sort of performance or service in that mode.
No, not at all. So do you get help from, do you kind of sit down or anything? Do you have kind of any plan where you go through what the week's going to look like with your partner or anything like that, so that you make sure that you have that time for yourself? Or it, it sounds like you kind of fit it into the gaps that you have, but do you also make sure that you have dedicated time as well?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I schedule myself time to practice. Now my kids are both in school in primary school now, so
Yeah.
um, time has opened up somewhat.
Yeah.
As any parent knows, that there's always, the inevitable um, sick days and all
Yeah.
unpredictable, but I
Yeah.
schedule myself time that's, pretty non-negotiable to me. I usually try to do some practice like right immediately after I've done all of the morning family activities and school run, because I know that, it can be harder to get to yourself if you leave it to later in the
Yeah.
and as I said, I also like to get up before everyone so I can have even just 20 minutes by myself, and that's kind of become a more sort of intuitive practice of, oh, do I need to just sit here and just drink my tea, or do I feel like just getting down on the floor, moving a bit, or a little bit of meditation. So just kind of really like
Mm.
seeing what's needed. And just that for me has been a real game changer to have that opportunity to kind of set my state. The flip side of that being like, for me to be able to do that, I need to go to bed early.
Yeah.
I stay up too late. That's not really available to me. So, for example, like my partner, my husband, and I usually, I'm no night owl, so usually he does the evening kid stuff, which is really helpful,
Okay.
which supports me to, be able to have rest so that I can do what I need to do the next morning. Just as an example, but it's always like shifting, and I
Yeah.
think as as a mom also. The different needs and demands of
Yeah.
your children just are constantly shifting. As soon as you think you have a rhythm, like everything changes.
Yeah.
And again, it's just being, and that's okay. Like and your practice doesn't need to be rigid. The more we can just kind of do what we can when we can and embrace that. Um, the more we get out of it. And yeah, for me, especially when my kids were littler, letting go of this notion that it has to be sort of this formal
Mm.
thing, letting go of that, it's really liberating. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I think I mean, that is what yoga can teach you as well, isn't it? It's another part of your yoga practice, is like the flexibility and being able to let things go. I remember my mum, we did this yoga course a while ago, and she was like, "Oh, I need to make a special place where I can do this practice." And the guy was like, "No, you don't. You can just do it. You don't need to make a special place to do it. You can do it wherever." And that is part of your yoga, is learning that you can just do it wherever, and not have to have it a certain way, or it quite often, athletes are perfectionists. They want to get it all right, and they want to do it exactly right. So being able to do that makes a massive difference. And I think yoga can definitely teach you to let go of a little bit of that perfectionism,
yes,
um, and be a bit more adaptable, because that's what we need to do, especially as parents. And it is like you just get thrown curveballs all the time. It's like, oh, okay.
I absolutely, like that's the only certain to just expect the unexpected every day.
Yeah,
Really, yeah,
yeah, it's all fun though, isn't it?
yes.
I know, I thought we were out of it, and it was like, yeah, they're getting older, they're gonna leave, and now it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Teenagers, it's kind of a different. ball game. I don't know whether it's worse or better. I don't know. Mentally, I'm like fried, but
Right.
physically, I was like that when when they were little. You're physically kind of tired, and it's the sleep and the sort of fatigue and things like that. Whereas now they sleep. They are teenagers sleep, but then there's the other side of it. Like you worry about them because of life, and But yeah, yeah. So and as you were talking a little bit about women and how we kind of have different phases in our lives, and I would say also my practice has changed since, like, quite a bit. Because I've also changed my training as well, to be honest. I'm not training as much as I was anymore, but I did integrate some meditation and breathing practices in lockdown because I was getting really stressed, and I
Mm.
was doing sort of 10 minutes every morning, and that just kind of evolved into a lot longer now. And I do get up in the morning and I just sit and I breathe, and it's really nice to have the routine. I think we talk about our bedtime routines, but I think our morning routine, like you say, is also really important. And having something in there where we don't just get up and sort of like get coffee sort of down us straight away and kind of go at 100 miles an hour. I really like that kind of integration into the day of sort of gradually, you know, getting into it. And I don't know, I think that's made a big difference for me doing that. So it's good.
Yeah, having that time to I think of it as just sort of setting your state for the day. Just it's a
Yeah.
game rather than just like jumping. I mean, how jarring! Like
Yeah.
you're even awake, just all the the bombardment of if you like get right onto your phone or
Yeah.
have small children. And if you are in that season now, having anyone listening who has very small children, just also knowing that will pass as well.
Yeah.
That morning space does become more available. I'm just remembering back to when my youngest was under two. We had a whole year of he woke up at 4:10, 4:10, 4:10, 4, to the point where I was convinced there must be something in the house that was like actually waking
Waking them up.
so precise. And sometimes he would even push it to like 3:50, and I was just like, yeah, that kind of almost broke me a bit. And I remember during that time, like just longing to be able to have a more sort of gentle start and to kind of
Mm.
greet greet myself. Yeah, before anything else.
Before they morning, jumping in the bed, like
It can be
they've
quite
just got so
dramatic.
much energy, haven't they? Yeah. Oh, bless. Yeah, no, yeah, we're sort of talking like, yeah, you can do this, but there are times in your life when you can't necessarily do that, but you can still do it a little bit. At the other end of the day, there might be a window there, or it could be during the day if you've got that opportunity as well. There's always places where you can find it. It's just looking for those opportunities for you.
Right.
Um, so yeah, what are you working on now? We talked about your practice has evolved, and you've got your athletes for yoga. I know you've got like coaches on there and athletes who do, so it's not just you teaching yoga, it's other people as well that you've got partnering with you in there. But if you want to tell us a little bit more about that and anything else new that you're working on as well, that'd be great.
Sure. Yeah. So Athletes for Yoga, we recently launched our coach training, which is an online course just designed to, guide people. Don't have to be yoga people. I find kind of more athletes who are not trained yoga teachers have been drawn toward it. It's
Yeah.
about teaching yoga and balanced contextual practices to athletes. And it all really comes back to, the mission of Athletes for Yoga, which is um, it's athletes for yoga. It's meant to be athletes guiding athletes,
Mm.
really creating that context. that's so key. And so, we're with that, we're inviting people to take the course and get some grounding, in our approach, and if they so choose, become compensated members of our coach community. So that's been well received so far, and it's just so great to have other athletes on there sharing, what they're really using. I think that's really,
Yeah.
also creates a more valuable entry point for athletes than, the yoga lady talking about yoga. Like, I'd be more curious, oh, how is my favorite pro runner using yoga? What does she
Yeah.
do? Like, what helps her? I think that that's a lot. That's quite compelling, and it's great. For example, we have Stephanie Howe, who's a pro trail and ultra runner. She did some videos for us recently, all filmed just on her trail in context. Oh, I just
Oh,
finished my run. This is what I do right when I finish my run before I transit as a transition before I get on with my day. So then again, it gives, more example and inspiration for, the concept of yoga for real. Like, you don't like have to do your workout and then go to a yoga studio.
no.
Do your run and then
I've got to have my mat and all this stuff. Yeah.
like, do your run, and then like you don't even have to leave the trail and do this 5-minute hamstring stretching
Yeah.
routine. So getting more voices involved, um, leading by example, is something that we're really excited about. I mean, that's really the whole purpose of what Athletes for Yoga is: athletes leading up athletes. So that's been really exciting to
Yeah.
progress. And personally, I've started a new offering called Balance Practice, which is my newsletter over on Substack, where I explore just the themes of balance and practice a bit more broadly, with a weekly offering of, writing, prompts, gestures, sometimes some yoga and meditation experiences designed to kind of inspire and support balance. So
Yeah.
that's another thing to check out.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, I'll put the links below, and make sure that those are in the show notes for everybody so that they can find you and connect with you, because you've got a lot of valuable information and loads of content that's really helpful for people. I really like that idea of, having things put in context of your training day, because like you say, it's otherwise people don't always understand how do I do this, where do I do this, what do I do, how long does it need to be. So that's amazing. And I remember doing your bike, using the bike as a kind of,
Oh, sure. Yeah.
like to do hamstring stretches and things like that, and just seeing it there. And I used that, some of those stretches, I was doing like a weekly Zoom turbo session.
Mm.
So we do that at the end of it, just like a little reset there, and I get people to use their breathing to kind of calm them down, and that kind of thing. So, and breathing, that's something that you can do, tune into whenever. And, if you've got that in your head as a kind of tool to noticing, it's another thing that helps you kind of tune in, isn't it, to your body. It's like, okay, what's my breathing doing? Can I check into that? And have you got breathing exercises in your?
We do. There's a whole section of there's meditation and breathing. They're all
Hmm.
around 5 minutes. So
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah.
right, for how you can really use, your breath, your most powerful and accessible
Mm. Yeah, and for like pre-race things, I quite often suggest breathing techniques to people for that, because it really does make a difference. It helps a lot of people. There's just, I know I'm conscious of time, but just tell a quick story. I was walking down to the first time I did Ironman Wales, and everyone's like really nervous, and I was going, just breathe in, then just go a really long breath out, like that. Just do like a few of those, and I noticed everyone started like turned and looked at me, and kind of like everyone kind of like chilled out a little bit once I started. It was just me doing it and some other guy, and the sort of energy changed a little bit. It was like, wow, just by mentioning it or people sort of seeing us doing it was affecting that, and
Yeah,
people seemed a bit less kind of
I bet. Oh, that's so good. Yeah, and
yeah,
interesting to see if you're breathing really well, really deeply, even maybe slightly audibly. It's you can kind of notice how sometimes those around you will kind of pick up on that.
yeah,
It's interesting, even like when I teach yoga classes, I've always found it's like at the beginning, breathing's kind of all over the place, but as you kind of get going, you can actually sort of feel and hear this
mm,
collective deepening of the breath, and it's incredibly calming. And
yeah, yeah. The energy just shifts, doesn't it? By the end of the session, it's like, oh, can you feel how different that feels? It's very different.
yes,
Oh, that's awesome. Um, okay. There was something else I was going to say. Now I've completely forgotten.
okay,
That's all right. It doesn't matter. It's probably not important. But yeah, it's been really nice to talk to you. And yeah, I'll make sure that we've got the links below. I know you've got a code as well for the podcast, so I'll pop that in. Which is, do you want to explain the code?
right. So yes, I've given a promo code that you can use for a free month of Athletes for Yoga video. So you want to go online to video.athletesforyoga.com, and you can apply the code there. And after you've done that online, then you can use your login credentials to use the free app if you'd like.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's been great to talk to you, and I hope you have a lovely rest of your day and take care.
Thanks, you too.
No worries. Thanks for listening today. Have a great day. Take care. Bye for now.